but you could have been visited, and maybe we don't understand either one of those. Um,
Yeah, I
but
don't know if they're trying to communicate with me somehow, or trying to send me a message, or if it's just they're on my mind. But this has only been happening the past year and a half, and it's extremely real. Like, to me,
well,
it seems real, but it's
yeah,
not.
and seeing that's the wild thing about sleep paralysis is when you're there, your brain, again, yeah, you feel like you're processing everything in the room, but you're still asleep. So you're asleep, but you're still processing things in the room. You're seeing things in the room. Mine was always just like a black figure. I won't even say figure because it really didn't have form, like arms and legs. It was just like something black mass in the room. But that went away like 20 years ago. And then remember, I think I told y'all like a few podcasts ago that the one time I did try the meditation CE5 here at home, that night I did have sleep paralysis come back, and I actually did see what I understood as beings, but again, it was in a sleep paralysis state. So it's so hard to tell. Like, I don't think we understand how strong the mind can be and play images for us, fire or pull up images based on some, you know, something that we're influenced by. Like you just said, you research this a lot, so maybe that's what it pulls up, and your brain goes, oh, okay, he's trying to look at this. I'm going to pull up an image of an alien, since this is what Hannibal wants to look at, and he's in a frightful state. So I'm going to show him this, and your brain is like just trying to process and work through it with you. Um, or, or yeah, you're actually being visited by something. So I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's so hard to tell. But when I hear some of these stories where they go a step beyond, that's just where it's so hard for me just to understand how that process works. How you end up. Um, you even talk about some people that say they went somewhere. I woke up and I was in the woods. Well, is that sleepwalking? You know, it's so hard to tell. And I don't want to be disrespectful to experiencers or people's stories, but at the same time, like my logical mind goes, yeah, you had sleep paralysis and you have sleepwalk, or you're sleepwalking. And now I've never been able to sleepwalk that coherently to be able to walk down my stairs, go out the front door, and go walk out in the middle of the woods. I think that takes some level of coherence, right? And if you're able to sleepwalk through that, I I don't even understand that myself, let alone an abduction, right?
Yeah,
But
it may have something to do with reading this book by audiobooks as I'm falling asleep, which, by the way, this is a really good book, UFOs and the National Security State, Volume 1. This is from like 47 to like, I think, 1970 or something. It's amazing how many documented UFO cases there have been with the military
oh yeah,
between like 47 just to like the late 60s. It's like, you don't think that we've known this much all the way back then, but we have. It just hasn't gotten out.
yeah.
So I would highly recommend that book.
Well, and I wonder how much we have tested on our soldiers, and we just don't declassify that. So, I mean, let that sink in, because if the Tic Tac, if that Tic Tac UFO ends up being Lockheed Martin, and we were just out there testing it on Fravor just for you know reaction, to get real world reaction, we didn't want to read Fravor in on the Tic Tac. We wanted him to interact with it organically and deal with it as a Top Gun pilot in his F-18, and just see how it worked itself out. How did he respond? Is he going to go into an anxiety or panic attack in the F-18? They need to see real world mechanical responses to him seeing something anomalous. So it just makes you wonder how much is tested on our people. Um,
Yeah.
and this is where a lot of the UAP UFO stories come from, like what you're talking about.
How do they go to the bathroom in those F-18s, by the way?
I
Because
don't
they're in
know.
those things for a long time. Do they
Oh
just
no, 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 they're not. Those things can't fly long. You can't. I
okay?
mean, yeah, yeah, not the
So
fighter
there's no
jets.
bathroom. If you got to go, you're just basically going.
No, yeah, those guys can hold it because those things, any kind of fighter jet. I don't even care if you're talking about the I think they're called the FN Tigers. Um, yeah, I think that's what they do some training and stuff out of. I know the Talons, the T-38 Talons is like their number one training jet and just a single engine training jet. You see tons of those up all the time. Um, and then they have the other ones that aren't as on radar as much. They're starting to pop up F-16s on the radar over the Gulf a lot. But you'll never see an F-18 on radar, not our radar that we can see. You'll never see the F-22, F-35. But when those get into the air, they're not up there long. I'm telling you, when they go out, I watch F-16s take off, go over the Gulf. They chase down. They do a couple. Uh, there's a ATAC company. They're like a contractor where they fly out and they just play intercept. And they fly out a couple jets over the Gulf or out over the Atlantic, or out over the Pacific, and we have to scramble a couple jets to go intercept them, and that's the practice they do. And you're talking about that whole drill. They're probably done with that drill in an hour and 15 minutes. So, and then they got to refuel. Now, they can refuel them midair, right? I mean, so refueling midair happens a lot. And we have tons of refuelers here in North Carolina. They run the Pegasus, the KC-46 here, and they run obviously the 135 Stratotankers here out of North Carolina. Well, I don't think we have any Stratotankers here in North Carolina, but we have the KC-46s. Those are flown out of here a lot, but they can stay up in the air, Hannibal, with refueling. But I just don't think they make it common to be up for long periods of time. Maybe go up long enough to do one refueling and come back. So maybe tops 2 to 3 hours they would be up. But yeah, it's they do have piddle backs just in case. So Gene's saying they do have little bell outs, just in case something does happen. I guess that makes sense. It's kind of like the guys
Wow.
in
How could you
NASCAR.
even go that fast and pee if you're friggin' going that fast?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that'd be. I mean, those guys are talented.
Oh yeah, yeah, but yeah, I mean, but going back to what we were mentioning with Bledsoe, did you heard what he said though? He would not. The interesting news. So he had come up and he showed a video and it looked like it was birds. You could actually see the bird flying around in erratic movements, and apparently he tried to film that and say it was an alien or this orb spiritual being flying around. And some people started posting and they just said, well, hey, can you just give us the time, date, location? That's the same thing we've talked about here, right? Whenever people post anomalous things in the sky, and again, our buddy Chad from MUFON, Iowa, if Chad's orbs would have been up in the air, like if Chad would have sent me his pictures and he'd been like, Casey, look at these crazy pictures, and they're up 3,000-4,000 feet, the first thing that I would have asked Chad, date, time, location. Let me know where you were, Chad. What date was it? What time was it? Because I'm going to go check radar like that. His were down on the ground, so it kind of like it was a moot point. I mean, they were right behind his car, so we obviously know it wasn't airplanes or any kind of craft like that. So, but when somebody shows something up in the sky, that's the first thing we ask is date, time, location, just so we can check. His response to the whole community now, not just me, the whole community, Chris tells us that's proprietary data. So pretty much that's for me to know. And, if you want to if you want to see these things, you got to go figure it out yourself kind of thing. I'm telling you, man, that is wild. And even some of the people who have been kind of more on the sideline, just waiting and seeing with Chris, were even speaking out against Chris. Like, man, that's wild. Like, you will not even, like, we're sitting here trying to understand the phenomena, and you won't even give us basic information. And see, I've already ran into this issue with Chris. I've been talking with Chris back a long time ago when I got very interested in his subject, and I offered help, and I was like, hey man, if you kind of let me know what night you filmed that, I have reflectivity radar we could look at. We have the basic standard. He doesn't want to know. He doesn't want you to look at that stuff. And so yeah, it's a little concerning, and but he does say that he is working with big names at Department of Defense. There again, we want to know who is he working with. Um, be very interested if somebody tied to him ends up being one of these witnesses we hear about in September that comes in front of Congress, because if he's got these powerful friends from the CIA and the Department of Defense that's working with him, isn't that something we'd want to know about? And Representative Burleson was photographed with Chris Bledsoe. I don't know if you saw that. I actually had it. I was looking for it on my X. Burleson took a picture with Chris Bledsoe, and they were buddied up together.
Wow,
So,
weird.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I give him the credibility, but maybe he's just, I don't know. These senators like publicity, and maybe he just did it for the publicity. I did a video while you were in Orlando about this interstellar object
yeah.
that it's not in the news as much this week, but the last couple
Right.
weeks it has been. Supposedly, it's like 7 miles across. This thing. It's heading towards Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a comet. Um, Avi Loeb is saying we're going to know more around the 29th. He said there's a 40% chance at this point that it could be an extraterrestrial craft, and we'll know more around October 29th when we'll be able to see the tail or not. What do you think about this object that apparently, speaking of what's her face, Anna Polina Luna, apparently she's actually had a conversation with Avi about this object.
Yeah, and we definitely got to touch on this before we close tonight, which is all these doomsday preppers. Tons of doomsday news coming out constantly. I mean, again, Bledsoe has his prophecy. I'm hearing that there's been some back channels between either Lou or Lou's attorney, Ivan Hannibal or something, that's been back channeling with people, apparently telling folks to get ready or to prepare their families for some impending doom. I don't know what that's all about. I really don't know if it's tied to this thing. Now, this interstellar object, I mean, it is acting very comet-like, right? And that means that if it's got a bunch of, and let's just put this out in layman's terms, which I love to do, being a simpleton. If it's got a bunch of icy shit on it, and it starts getting close to the sun, guess what that shit's going to start doing? It's going to start melting, and it's going to form its tail. And that's exactly what it started to do. It started to act like a comet, right? And um, so as far as it stands right now, it's just a comet. I mean, there's nothing really special to see here unless that comet's supposed to hit us. So, I don't know. So if the impending doom is not that it's an alien ship and they're prepping for war against us, then the thing's going to ram us. That could be another possibility, and it's just a big ass rock. So, but there's a lot of in ufology, and this is where I struggle with ufology sometimes. There's just too many topics going on, and some of them are just batshit crazy stuff, and some of them are more tangible and I can wrap my head around. But this whole, like, so much doomsday prepping, man. I mean, depending on who you're talking about, who you're covering. But I will say one interesting thing to plug Gene's book. You know, one thing that Chernohayev talks about in the book is the rise and fall of, different cultures and different civilizations as they, trend up and they reach a peak, and then they start to trend down, and then they fall off, and then they rise, and then something else rises. So, that's an interesting aspect of this, is that, it is kind of a proven cycle that humanity, either by civilization or however you want to break it up, that we do seem to kind of go through these developmental stages. So, and that's looked into in the book that we covered here with Gene. And you kind of hear the same thing going on in ufology right now. People talking about that, the rise and fall of these civilizations, and are we coming out of a fall? And I'm starting to hear other people talk about that in other different podcasts and reports and things, that people think we're coming out of something. Now, whatever you want to attribute that to, there may be some Christians that attribute that to a second coming. There may be some people that are more enlightenment based, and they think it's more of an enlightenment period of some kind. I don't know. I think it just depends on maybe what your background is and what you attribute, you know, your hopes and wishes and faith and dreams to. But it's definitely interesting that this rock appears to be showing up at the same time. Now, a lot of people, Hannibal, are pulling up Corbell's video, right? Of Corbell saying they're going to tell you that something's coming, right, in
Yeah.
2027, and that's going to be
But
the
they're
big
not
lie.
saying 2027 for this. They're saying we're going to know in October.
Yeah, so see, that's my point. Is I don't think that has anything to do with the Lou thing. I mean, with the Corbell thing. I actually think that if Corbell is right that they're going to tell us something is coming, that has nothing to do with this interstellar object. I actually just think that comet could have just showed up randomly, which is that's our cosmos for you, right? It's a randomized place. I mean, you never know when things can come and go, but I just think I don't think that's it. I don't think that's what he was talking about, was this interstellar object and predicting it was coming. But yeah, I don't see much of it, not yet. It's hard to grab on with Avi. I want to be respectful of him because I think Avi's super nice, super interesting. But you remember the Oumuamua one, and that was just kind of a comet that passed on through as well. And he made a bunch of news about that. So unfortunately, money is always at play here, and nothing direct to Avi. I'm not saying he's lining his pockets, but he has to win money and grants and things like that to do the research that they need to do at the Galileo project. So you have to take that into account. He has to make some news. He has to, shake the tree every now and then and get people to look at what he and his team are doing. What better way than to say something coming through the Earth or coming through our galaxy has a 40% chance of being extraterrestrial? Well, yeah, that's going to grab some headlines, right? So you do have to factor that in, that they're
Yeah, I have a science friend that works for the National Research Council here in Canada. That's pretty much one of the smartest guys I know, and he thinks that Avi is using this to help get publicity on his name, and he believes that Avi knows deep down that this is going to turn out to be just something regular, but he's using all the hoopla around it to try and build his name, and then he's just going to say, well, I never said it was. I just
right.
said it was a 40% chance.
That's really where I think we're at, man. And I mean, again, no, I may probably do the same thing if I'm in Avi's place. If somebody says, "Hey, man, just go out there. You're from Harvard. You're a well-known person in the community. You have the ear of some people at Congress, and et cetera, et cetera." And you know, okay, so if it isn't an extraterrestrial object, go make some news. Go generate some interest, and then that way, when we go try to win some of this money for our research, we're going to be at the top of the list on consideration for this money because you put our name out there. We're not sitting silently on the sideline. We're always in the news when these things pop up, and people are going to trust us with their money. So, that's what I'm talking about. Is I think that you have to count that in there. Is that he's probably saying what he's saying, just so that they kind of stay on the front page. But no, I'm not really even giving that much more thought, Hannibal, to be honest with you. There's some things that fell out of the news while we were gone for a couple weeks. So the Booga Sphere, it's not really been making much news. The interstellar object has not been making much news.
True, it kind of totally disappeared. The Buga spear.
But the Nazca mummies did pop back up in there thanks to Jesse Michaels. He did run a podcast on it, or one of his episodes on it on his podcast, American Alchemy, on the Nazca mummies. So the mummies are actually staying on the forefront. You know, we've had Pavel on here talking about the tridactyls there in Peru. Um, so that one's not going away. So I will say that is one I'm still kind of keeping an eye on. The fans can go to tridactyls.org if they want to read more about those. You can go see their fingerprints. You can see all this information released on them. It's definitely interesting. We all are very cautious with those stories from South America. Only nothing to do with South America. It just has to do with, usually it's led by Jaime Maussan, so you just have to be careful. It's kind of like, you know, dealing with Stephen Greer up here. He's been called the Stephen Greer of South America. You just have to be careful. You know, and again, that's no slight. That's not me insulting anybody. That's any case, but every now and then, you know, you have a case pop up and this one over here is so shit and this one over here could be the best case in the world, but you played over here with this pile of shit for so long that now this one stinks too. And that's what happens sometimes. It's just like, you know, you don't have to go over here and play with that shit. You should have just been over here, you know, polishing this is really good case that you had and not being over here worried about this other thing. So
Good point. Well, it's been very interesting catching up with you. We're going to be back
yep.
next week. If you guys have any topics you want us to cover next week, put them in the comments because we'll look at them between now and next Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll let you wrap this up. Casey, the UFO Tarheel. Thanks a lot, fans, for all of your comments. And thank you, Gene.
Yeah, thanks, Gene, for participating there. And we'll have Gene back on. So if fans also have any questions from Gene, we'll get that episode scheduled and we'll talk more from the engineering infinity front on the book that he and the team came authored. But then, yeah, we also have Chrissy Newton. She'll be coming up soon this month. I'll have to check the date on that. It may be next week. I'm off a little bit. So, or it's actually, I think it's a couple weeks away. But if you've not checked out her work, again, she's on, if you go look up Bryce Zabel on YouTube, he's the one that was doing uh, the podcast with Ross Coulthart. And Ross Coulthart was replaced. So I don't know if you know that either, Hannibal, that Coulthart is no longer on the Need to Know podcast
Yes, what
with,
happened with that?
it's now Richard Dolan who took Ross
What
Coulthart's
happened?
place.
Do you know the dirt of that?
I don't know the dirt yet, other than just, you know, maybe Ross was just too busy with his News Nation stuff. It did seem like Ross has had a lot more going on lately with his reality check. So, you know, yeah, and I'm tempted to agree with you, Ray. Um, it's if disclosure does happen, I do think it's probably going to end up being like just something will happen, right? there, there will be an event that no one. It's not going to come through Congress. It's definitely not going to come through. Um, but some people have already said it's already happened. But anyways, but yeah, so Need to Know podcast. That's with Bryce Zabel, but he also does the one with the book review with Chrissy. Chrissy's the one who we're going to have on, and so Chrissy has a lot of connections, fans. So I'm telling you, she knows. She's friends with. Oh shit, what's the guy that? Oh, his name just like Jacques Vallée. She's friends with Jacques. So I mean, she's got some good stories. She's definitely connected. She knows her stuff. So, yeah. But any questions that you have, I mean, either for Gene with his background, you know, CIA contract work, you know, Air Force work, and then Gene working on his book and stuff, and then Chrissy, obviously with her background. Any questions that you might have, definitely post them here in the chat on this video or any of the upcoming ones, and you know, we'll keep them plugged in and keep you tuned in for when they're coming up on their episodes as well. So thanks for all the support.